Hey everybody, this is Nerd Without a Herd, your podcast where a teacher, when he doesn't have his students around, interviews interesting people and looks into interesting topics. And today I have a special guest, David Olney, our district superintendent at Hesperia Unified School District. David, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jason. Doing very well. Sitting here in my office. It's a very lonely place right now, but I'm doing very well. Thanks. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. Struggling with technology in my end because there we go. I just hit my transition, so I am now in the screen with you.
All right.
Yeah, the funniest thing is, I think more than anything, I'm driving my wife crazy because I have all this energy that I expend on my students on a daily basis, and
Right.
she's now the recipient of all that energy. So that's learning a kind of a new normal, so to speak.
Absolutely.
But real quick, before we get into the questions I wanted to ask you for this discussion, do you want to just talk about the state of the district right now? Do you have any updates?
Sure.
I know things probably change minute to minute.
You know, they really do, and I think that's what has been really unprecedented about what we're going through is you just don't know what's going to happen from one day to the next. But let me at least say this. In terms of the state of the district, as superintendent, I could be more proud of how everybody has really stepped up. I got an email just the other day from one of our principals, and he was having a conversation with his assistant principal, and they have a lot of contacts in districts around the area. And they were just saying how organized Hesperia Unified has been, how smooth all the transitions have been. And, they were thanking me, but as I shared with them in my response in my email, this really has little to do with me. It has to do with the people in this district and where we really have established ourselves over the last 5-6 years. I mean, we're a one-to-one district. 3 years ago, we made that decision to, we started out grades 2 through 12, and we made that decision to go grades 1 through 12. And so when you really look at that, a vast majority of our students are already familiar with technology. We have 4 Google innovators in our district, 2 of them administrators, 2 that are still in the classroom, and they're providing support. We have an amazing impact team in our district. So we have so many people that have been providing support to one another. I know when I talk with our board members, a lot of times they talk about the idea that Hesperia really is a family. And when families go through difficult times, they all come together. And when you realize, okay, 2,300 employees, 22,000 students, but with all of that, as large as it is, they've really come together. And we're doing some amazing things right now.
Gosh, when you talk about those kind of numbers, that's equivalent to a lot of cities in the United States. So basically, it's like handling a small city. But I agree with you. The one thing that, and my next question you already answered, which is what makes you proud, what makes you smile right now. But the one thing that's really been super impressive as a teacher in this district, before anything really went down, and since we've taken this transition to distance learning, is all the unofficial impromptu PD that's happening group wise, collaboratively, small group, these pop-up PLCs and available trainings. And that's just been really cool to see my colleagues, and I could run down a long list of names, but I won't, because I'll leave people out, that are literally, you need anything, I'm live. Hey, my class hours are here, but I've got hours here. You need anything. And I think I've always said the best PD to me happens when it's with my colleagues at Hesperia Unified. I've been to some great conferences that I've pulled stuff out of, but I grow more as an educator when I get time to work and collaborate with my peers. And it's cool to see that happening on a corporate level.
It is incredible, isn't it? I mean, it truly is. But I think if you really look at one of the things that we've focused on over the past few years, and I've said this in many a sitting with teachers and with administrators, is you can go out and you can find great conferences, as you said, but truly the magic is right here. And it's really tapping into that talent that we have in our district, which truly is. You're right. We could both go down and just name after name after name and situation after situation and say, wow, these are incredible things that are happening in our district. But I think that focus of really trying to allow the folks throughout the district to collaborate, to have those conversations, to have time. And time is such a precious resource. But that ability to share what we're doing. And because I think we've been doing that much more over the past few years, as soon as this happened, I mean, it just ramped up and continued. So that's pretty incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny too because a couple of days ago I was I was in my garage and I felt a little locked in and trapped, and I happened to think, like, what is the one thing that, especially this time of the school year, that I wish I had more of? And it's usually time. It's usually, because this is when you come back from spring break, you have testing, you have, I'm at high school, so we have graduation, and to be able to kind of exhale and slow down and really start to be creative again at this point of the year. There are some blessings in that. I mean, I wish this wasn't the way it happened, but there is something about that. And to just piggyback on one thing that you said about the conferences, and again, I love conferences. I think they're great to go out. But as a secondary teacher, the one place where I think I've grown the most over the last few years has been collaboration with our elementary teachers. Yeah. And so often people think secondary and elementary are separated, but our elementary teachers have just some amazing strategies and use of technology and innovative ways with literacy that we talk about. I always tell my principal, Mr. Algren, that, if I have days, I would rather go shadow elementary teachers at our district than go to another. And not that we have great secondary too.
Sure.
But it's when you can get out of your world and go back and look at just the engagement strategies and the creative things, it's awesome. So any secondary teachers who watch this, think about that as in lieu of a conference. Think about going and shadowing some of our elementary teachers. I think it's hugely beneficial.
Absolutely. And I think you hit on something too, and really it's that the ability to handle 5 and 6 year olds, it's an amazing skill. And you talk about the level of engagement that you have to have, the ability to transition from one activity to the next and rather quickly, because those attention spans at 5 or 6 years old are not the longest. You have masters in the classroom when it comes to those kind of skills.
But here's the funny thing is, every time I go down there and I see one of their strategies, and I think about bringing it back to my juniors and seniors, and I think, like, ooh, how are they gonna respond to this? They usually love it. They love it, like, because I think at the heart of it is learning being fun,
Right.
and so I can't say enough about the ability to learn and grow through collaboration with our peers. I just feel blessed to be in a district that has so many great teachers.
I've been really blessed in my career because I've had the opportunity to teach at all 3 levels: elementary, middle, and high. I've also been an administrator at all 3, and that is just something. And how this happened in my career, I have no idea. It's just the way that the roads kind of turned. But you said something that I think is really key. Obviously, you have to adapt, but a lot of the skills, a lot of the strategies that you can utilize in the elementary work very, very well, even with when I taught juniors and seniors. They did work. I did adapt them, but the essence of engaging and building that enthusiasm for learning, that's something that works across the spectrum.
Yeah. So that leads me into the big question. This is the thing I really wanted to talk about. Now, talking about these great teachers, it's funny, most of my friends are teachers. It just seems to happen that way. I have noticed in the last few weeks a palpable measure of just anxiety and angst and fear. And at no point have I seen anywhere from the DO, from admin, or anyone saying, hey, we got to be perfect, we got to be great. But teachers, committed teachers, go into this transition, and so many of them we're so worried going into this week. And our principal did something, Mr. Olney did something I thought was a good idea. When we had our Monday meeting, he said, whatever you do, don't change anything midweek. Work through the week, then let's have a reflection, and then let's make adjustments. But my question is, I think as teachers, a lot of us put an expectation on ourselves to be perfect. And I just want them to hear from, the district superintendent, what are your expectations for us?
First, before I even try to answer that, let me say that I think that by and large, my expectations have already been greatly exceeded. I have been so impressed with the work that individuals are doing. Just last week, my wife has a friend. My wife is a retired ER nurse, and one of her friends is still working as a nurse at this time. And she reached out to her, just wanted to make sure she was doing okay. Well, she happens to have some kids in our schools. And she shared a video the other day of we were talking about our kindergarten teachers, right? One of our kindergarten teachers reaching out to this lady's daughter. And she's got her iPad set up, and you're watching them do these activities. And I got tears in my eyes just watching what this teacher was doing, reaching out and impacting this child's life. There are examples of that throughout. Look, this is new for everyone. I want everybody to catch their breath. I don't want, and I know this is difficult for educators. I've always said that educators, we all want to have it go perfectly. That's in our psyche, right? And this is new. But please know that you're already exceeding my expectations. And I think that you are making this community. I have heard so many positive comments throughout this community about how these teachers have already stepped up. And not just our teachers. I mean, we can talk about our nutrition services people. My assistants and the communication that they've helped keep going throughout this community, it's been phenomenal. But in terms of our teachers, this is new. First and foremost, have faith in your abilities because you're already doing a great job. We are a district that has been incredibly innovative over the years. We have amazing supports in place, our coaches, our impact team members, your colleagues, and yes, even your administrators. I mean, we're all here to support. So it's not going to be perfect, but I can tell you just the fact that you're reaching out to your kids is having such a tremendously positive impact. A colleague of mine shared a saying, and I've shared this with our administrators. This is a time that we need to be focusing probably more on Maslow than Bloom's. While we want to engage kids in learning, we need to foremost make sure that they're doing okay, because this is a tremendously challenging time in terms of anxiety, not just for us as educators, but really for our families, for our kids. 25% of our workforce has been laid off and lost jobs. There's a lot going on, and I think that emotional support, that connection, human connection right now is so much more important than anything else that we can do. The rest will fall into place, but I can tell you our educators are doing a fantastic job. I'm incredibly proud of the work that they're doing right now.
Well, I think that's great that they can hear that, because I don't think there's anyone that doubts that. But I think as teachers, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, because like we talked about, we've got a great group of teachers at HUSD, and with that, they expect a lot of themselves. And I just am glad that you're willing to come on and talk about that, because a couple of years back we talked about failing forward. This is the application of that, and the reality is when we get back to normal, no one's going to go, oh, you know what? Students in classrooms, we don't need this. I think if anything, like when we talk about bond measures and other things, that I think a lot of people are going to go, okay, even though the teachers are doing a great job in the distance learning, man, the need for a classroom environment, the need for, and classroom size and all those things that we talk about on a regular basis, at the end of the day, this isn't going to go as well as a classroom.
Sure. But you mentioned this earlier, and I think that it's oftentimes in periods of crisis, we also have opportunities to learn. There's a lot of silver linings here, and perhaps some of the strategies that some of us have hesitated to incorporate in our learning. We're kind of being thrust into something that we've never done before. And so I think that there's always going to be those opportunities to learn. I think when we get to the other side of this, which I hope is soon, I think we're going to be much stronger.
And that was actually my third question was, and I don't think it's too early to look at like the fact that we have a lot of teachers now who are that are innovating by necessity.
Right.
And that there's going to be, more people obviously adopting technology, but the new strategies, ways of engaging, ways of teaching, unpacking lessons, supporting students. I think there's going to be a massive uptick in the following years in the technology integration strategies and the effectiveness of it.
And I agree with you 100%. And again, I want to go back to something that I said a little while ago, because I think that again in Hesperia, I think that we were probably more prepared for something like this. As I speak with my colleagues, I'm speaking to our superintendents throughout the high desert, the mountain areas, almost on a daily basis, and I'm speaking with our superintendents throughout the county pretty much on a weekly basis. And as I'm hearing the stories and I'm seeing what's going on, and again looking at where we are in Hesperia, I think we were more prepared for distance learning just with everything that we've already had in place. If you go back to the beginning of this, realize this has only been a few weeks. I think that's what when I slow down long enough and really think about, I think that's the biggest surprise that I had. It's like, wow, this has only been 3.5 weeks. And one of those weeks being spring break, right?
Yeah.
We were back. I think it was around the week of March 9th, and I remember having a conversation with Ed Services. You were starting to we had already heard about what was going on in Italy, which was where I was supposed to be during spring break, by the way. Kind of glad that I wasn't there. But you started hearing some of the stories about potential school closures and some of the restrictions on gatherings. And one of the things that I shared with Ed Services at that time, I said, we need to have our principals and our teachers begin to work together to be prepared in case there is a school closure. In case. March 13th was that day that I made that phone call and we closed. So that was 4 days later. And if you look at that, in those 4 days, how much work had already been done by teachers to prepare for this? It was incredible. It really was. I was not anticipating closing on March 13th. I figured we'd probably get to spring break and possibly after spring break close. But we already had resources. By the time that we closed on March 13th, that following week, we had supplemental resources, TK through 12th grade, special ed, and adult ed already up on our website for our parents and our families to be able to use. And that was just how quick everybody in this community mobilized. And then you take a look at where we are now here in our first official week of distance learning. But we had teachers that were already doing this. We had teachers that were reaching out to their kids over spring break. So I think it's one, we were better prepared, I think, than a lot. And two, going back to what we're learning, I think it's going to bring people closer together, talking about what worked, what isn't working, how can we adjust, how can we change, and hopefully really find some of those strategies that we haven't tried before that are actually helping to accelerate that learning. We know that technology isn't the silver bullet, but there are things that we can do with technology that is with strong teaching and learning that is going to really have a positive impact on our young people.
Yeah, it's funny because I just got to thinking back. I don't know, 2012 maybe when we started doing blended learning in summer school, and again, so like we were doing things years ago that prepared us for this. And again, not every teacher was involved in that, but as you say, you know, there were a lot over those couple of years. And so yeah, there's a lot of things that we've done, whether it's, you know, plugged in conferences that we put on locally or that, yeah, I don't think this was a huge transition for a lot of our teachers, because even those who aren't super tech savvy, they had those rock stars, those tech stars in there, and everybody's willing to help and share.
That's a great culture.
One thing that I yesterday that kind of stood out to me is, you know, we talk about school being such an important place for kids to go to have structure and accountability and you know, emotional support and purpose, and we talk about the environment as what it is beneficial for students. I really realized yesterday that it's as beneficial for me being without my students, being a nerd without a herd right now. Is I am wired to you know, be with them, and I realized how much I mean, I obviously miss them, but I not just the missing. I realized how important that process, that dynamic learning process is for me, just personally, and maybe even at a spiritual level. And it's funny because when we talk about, you know, learning strategies and stuff, and one of the things that's really emerged over the last few years is being a lead learner and being a part of the process. And the Nerd Without a Herd thing happened because we had set this up to do Sound Pit Live as a weekly radio show, and then we were going to go live that first week before spring break. And I'm like, oh, we got all this set up, and here I am without kids, and I figured I can make all the mistakes now before they come back. but it is amazing how, I guess the point I'm trying to make is what a blessing they are to our lives. Yeah. You know, I was looking at the district website the other day with the scrolling banner of student pictures up, and I don't know, like I think a lot of people don't realize how much teachers really love doing this, and how vital it is to our lives. And the distance thing is new, but I feel like we're going to be solid. We're going to survive.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, I think when you take a look at many of our elementary schools, and this was prior to April 7th, the order that we heard from the public health department, but many of our elementary schools, their staffs got together in their cars and did parades through the neighborhood. So
yeah, I saw that. That was awesome.
And you know, you saw all the cool signs. I've gone out, and again, I've got to give a huge shout out to our nutrition services workers, because, you know, again, we closed on March 13th, which was a Friday the 13th. And on March 16th, we started serving meals at 3 locations in the district: Hesperia High, Sultana High, and Cedar Middle. And I've tried to get out there as much as I possibly can. I was out there the last couple of days, you know, in this wonderful weather we're having. As I look out the window and see the raindrops, you know, they've been out there with their easy ups in the rain, serving meals. And what's really cool about this, Jason, is as the cars pull up, there's kids in the car, and the grins they have on their faces, and you can see then with. I know I got to give props to Mr. Bird, who's been out there at Sultana handing out meals, and you know, but the food service workers and Mr. Bird and myself, the smile we get as we see the kids and we see the families. Again, you know, this nobody wants to go through what we're going through, but there are so many silver linings, and I think one of the things that this is forcing us to do, slowing down a little bit, really analyzing what is important. And what is important is community, and it is those connections. And you know, it's great that we have the technology. It's great that I can you know, look at the computer and I see Jason Cleaver. But I'm really looking forward to having our staff back, our students back, being able to give high fives and you know, just be in the physical presence of our colleagues and our kids again.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned Mr. Bird. I can't think of anyone who will probably suffer more during social isolation than Larry will. I mean, he's just a handshaker and a hugger and a people person by nature.
Absolutely.
So,
but he had his gloves on, he had his mask on. You know, we're living by masks and you know, the big bottles of Purell right now. Right, right. So,
and I came back from the store the other day and I had bread, Kleenex, and Lysol wipes, and I felt like I won the lottery. You know. Yeah. Any final word to close this out?
Well, you know, Jason, first of all, thanks for doing this, and again, it's great having this conversation because again, I think in these times we are feeling a little bit isolated. And you know, I was sharing with somebody the other day. I kind of consider myself to be somewhat unflappable. I kind of go with the flow, and you know, try to look at things as optimistically as I can. But you know, you can't help but drive down our streets and see that there's not as many cars out there. I mean, I think you see all the different things to know. You know, my wife's birthday was last Friday, and you know, I was here in my office and I left a little bit early. But to know that I couldn't take her out to dinner for her birthday, there's just all these little things that in the back of our minds, it tells us that, you know, things are different. And we need to really take this time to take care of ourselves as well. Because even if you are a person that usually doesn't get bothered by things like these, you know, it is finding a way into our psyche. And so, you know, take care of ourselves, eat right, exercise, do those things. Hopefully we'll get some sunshine this weekend and get that vitamin D, you know, take care of your immune system. I think that's real important. The other thing I want to share is again, you know, we've talked a lot about our teachers, and I truly am so very, very proud of the work that they're doing and the positive impact they're having in our kids. I've talked about nutrition services, but you know, there's a lot of people working behind the scenes right now, keeping the district moving. You know, our payroll team and our accounts payable team have been in every day throughout this crisis, are making sure their employees are getting paid, that we're paying the bills, keeping the district operations moving. Our personnel department is continuing to screen applications. We've got a new school year that'll be here before you know it. Positions need to be filled. They're screening applications. They're doing interviews on Zoom and Google Meet. There are so many people that are doing so many incredible things. And we've got to give a shout out to those individuals because a lot of times you don't see them. They're those faceless people, but they're the ones that are really keeping things moving.
Yeah, I thought about that, and a big shout out to all of our frontline people who are in the medical profession, and our nurses and doctors are getting a lot of love, but at the same time, janitorial staff at the hospitals, and you know, administrative staff, and there are so many people that you know, nationwide truck drivers and grocery store workers and logistics people. It's really been kind of nice to see America recognize the backbone of our country, and for, you know, the sports and the stars and the musicians not to have the limelight for a little bit. I think it's good to recognize what keeps us rolling. Mr. Olney, I appreciate you coming on. The home edition isn't as fancy as the studio edition, but maybe when all this is over, we could do our studio version much nicer. Take care, stay safe, and hopefully we'll all be shaking hands soon.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.